Hi, I'm Femi OK.
And I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream.
Today, the journey of a hashtag. Conceived from a passion, it gains momentum and takes over our feeds. But what happens when things begin to die down?
Now, we reunite with members of our community to find out what's happened to their campaigns.
This week, we're marking our 5th anniversary on the stream, and our mission has always been to bring your stories onto our air.
And we like to think of the stream as the space your voices become a community. Well, over the years, you've brought us to undercovered stories and places like Equatorial Guinea and the gulf between the rich and the poor. Catalonians are pushed to separate from Spain. Trinidad and Tobago and its front row seat to climate change. Baluchistan and their resistance to Pakistani governments. Antarctica and the scientists living on that freezing continent. That's one of my favorites. And the Ottawa-Pisgat First Nation in Northern Ontario. Now, today we want to go where you are to get your take on the challenges and successes of bringing an online story to the rest of the world. We'll be looking for your experiences under hashtag AJStream.
So how does a story make it on the air and onto the stream? So one way to get our attention is by sharing a viral hashtag. And when a campaign picks up momentum online, the world takes notice and so do we. So around us, you'll see heat maps that trended hashtags from Armenia, United States, and all the way around through the screen over there to South Africa. And there's just some of the stories that went from social to mainstream media, grabbing headlines around the world. And of course, the attention eventually fades. And our guests today know all about that. From New York, Stella Damasus is a Nigerian actress, singer and human rights activist, and she joined us in 2013 to discuss the Child Not Bride campaign. In Mexico City, Andalusia Knoll is an independent journalist who spoke to us a year ago about the Ni Una Menos campaign against femicide in Latin America. In Yerevan, Armenia, Babken DerGrigorian started the hashtag Electric Yerevan to protest high electricity prices and corruption in Armenia. And in Kampala, Uganda, James Propa is an independent journalist. Our team calls him a super streamer because of how often he's pitched ideas to us over the last 5 years. Welcome back, everybody. Good to have you here. Let me just start with Stella. Stella, do you remember the show that you were on with Senator Urima? And
yes,
he had a number of wives, and his youngest was, how old was she?
She was about 13 at that time.
All right, she was very young, and it was bringing to attention the idea of that there is an age that is too young to marriage, but this is a big debate in many countries, Nigeria included, about what's considered to be traditional and then what's considered to be child rights. So I'm just going to pick up that conversation where you were listening to the senator, and then you got, well, have a look for yourself.
How can a child of that age be able to withstand sex with a grown man that is old enough to be her grandfather? The lives of these little girls is all I care about, not your religion, not your type of marriage, not anything. But I am saying that if we do not put a stop to this, then we have an issue. We should stop making, excuse me, I'm not done.
So Stella, your jacket was not the only thing that was hot on that show. I mean, you lost it many times. What happened after that show?
What happened after that show was that the girl, the last wife that he married, he actually divorced her and married another one that was even younger.
Right.
And it continued. And I said, when people started complaining, I said, this is exactly what I was trying to say, that if we don't put a stop to this, they will continue to hurt these girls and destroy their lives. And it continued on and on. And it's just very painful that we have to face this all the time. Nobody's doing anything about it. They claim it is religion. Nobody's paying attention to the bill. Right. Nobody's paying attention to anything. You know, the Constitution is being thrown to the wind. So it's a huge battle that we're trying to face here.
Did people who were behind this Child Not Bride campaign, did they get into a lot of trouble? Was there a lot of blowback?
Oh, yes. A lot of trouble, especially from religious leaders. Especially from men who are northerners, because they say according to their tradition, because we're dealing with two different things now. We're dealing with people who say it's their tradition to marry a girl of any age as long as her father says it's okay.
Yeah.
And we're also dealing with people who says their religion allows them to marry 5 wives and even 10, 12-year-olds as long as they can memorize the Quran from beginning to end. So it's two battles that we're facing: the traditionalists and the people who use religion as a cover up for this mess, you know. And the fight that we're facing is we're facing two different sets of people, and unfortunately for us, 80% of these people are in power. That's the problem we're facing. So.
You know, Femi, that question you asked about, was there any trouble? Did anyone get into trouble? That's one that a few people can relate to, unfortunately, in our community. I want to share a story here. This is a web piece that the stream did back in May 2013. Ethiopians want freedom of demonstration for everyone. They were calling for the government to respect the right of freedom of assembly. We covered it with several tweets in it. After that happened, we received a story of something that happened to the people that were behind this campaign in the form of a video comment. I'm going to play this from Zelalakam, who talks about some of the backlash that he received.
Making a local story international or publishing a local story in the international press have its own consequences. For instance, in our case, during our arrest, more than a dozen of stories published on the international medias were presented as an evidence against us for a terrorism charge. We were surprised by the time. Especially Al Jazeera streams, for instance, Al Jazeera streams story in 2013 about our campaign. We were calling for the authorities to respect the constitution, where one of the evidences presented against us.
So Andalusia, in that video comment, he talks about how a hashtag campaign calling for freedom of assembly later led to the jailing of the people behind that campaign. Sort of a dramatic and intense end of the spectrum there. Was there blowback for you personally? Can you relate at all? I know that jail is a little bit of extreme, but were there consequences to you pushing for the hashtag you pushed for?
I think the only blowback I've really have suffered online is, especially when you're tweeting about violence against women, I think generally you get, you know, a range of harassment towards you, which ironically, actually, I remember last year when I was a guest on the stream, some of the first tweets at me were men hitting on me. I was talking about violence against women and harassment, and I was getting hit on, and that was the only thing they were saying. Anyways, I do think here, especially, this has not happened to me, but in Mexico, a lot of times when women are writing about, there's a hashtag now that's going around about called Yo Mi Primera Acoso, which is about the first time that women have experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault, and people are giving their testimonies. And then, you know, men or trolls are responding and you know, saying that they deserved it, or sometimes tweeting at you with, there's a horrible hashtag going around saying that a happy woman is a raped woman. And so I think that also some of my colleagues who tweet a lot, and especially about gender issues and feminist issues, say that they have often been sent photos of armed men threatening them. That happened recently with a fellow journalist who, Andrea Knoll, she was walking down the street in Mexico City, and a man ran by and yanked down her underwear and pulled up her skirt. She tweeted the video of it, and it went viral, and then she started getting tons and tons of tweets of armed men threatening her, and then actually saying that they knew exactly where they were, revealing her location, etc. So sadly, sometimes a result of tweeting and using these hashtags to combat gender violence is that you are then a victim of gender violence.
Let me just share with you something from the very top of Babken's Twitter page. It's pinned on the page. Take a look at the date here. It says 22nd of June 2015. And here he says, I got it. Hashtag for the protest. Hashtag electric Yerevan. Very big smiley face. Sometimes it's very hard to track down who started a hashtag. This was yours. How did you know that that might take off? What was the process that you thought through, Babken?
You know, what happened is that we were at the protest and a bunch of us were tweeting about it, and it just became too long to write anti-electricity protests happening in Yerevan. It was just taking up too many characters. Right. And to be completely honest, it was purely by coincidence that I came up with this hashtag and it took off. But I really am a believer in the fact that movements, hashtags don't make movements, movements make hashtags. So if there isn't already a movement happening, if there isn't already the impetus of some sort of social contention, you're not going to, a hashtag itself is not going to change anything.
Yeah.
And I think with Electric Yerevan, what happened is that there was already something really important happening, and all the hashtag did was make it more accessible for an international audience to pay attention. Because if people had been paying attention to what was happening in Armenia, these sorts of protests were not anything new. This was just the latest protest in a number of protests over the last few years. But Electric Yerevan was the first one that really took the international, got the international media's attention. And I think that's it. We just made it more accessible, really.
You know, it's interesting that you said that, because we got a tweet that seems to completely contradict your own experience. This is Nafizi, who's also a super streamer. He says, hashtags only draw the attention of the world when they're initiated by famous individuals. So I've heard where you stand on that, Babken. But I want to get the thoughts of James. Now, James, of course, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is another super streamer. James, I want to show our audience kind of an animation of how you have pitched the stream over the years. You've been with the show and our team since the very beginning, sending us ideas. You'll take a look and you can see some of the ideas that you have sent us. You definitely have different ideas from around the world. There's Uganda. You've tweeted out other stories that you've wanted us to cover. You see these and the rest of our audience sees these. Then what do you think, James, of this idea that the only things that are going to get attention are if they're tweeted by famous people or if they're involving people who have a lot of power?
Yeah, I actually think a person who is less known can start a movement. A movement can start online. For example, there is something that is happening around cancer right now in Uganda. It wasn't started by famous people, but famous people just jump on. When they jump on, they give it the legs. I mean, because it's going to reach a wider audience. So I believe when there is a movement, it gives it more value that even when the dust is coming down, people will still care about it because there was a movement around it. But if you start it alone and then it starts moving, when the dust goes down, even the people tend to give up on it. So but it's two-way. When a famous person maybe starts something, and it's usually, I don't think it happens like quite often that a famous person starts it. Yeah. They just get it from somewhere, or someone tells them about it, then they just bring it to the world. So yes. I don't really think it's something that they start up or they build up. I mean, it's maybe a company or a person who is close to them who tells them maybe this can work for you. And you know, with famous people, they always like to jump onto things, and because for them, it makes news for them.
James, let me show you something on my laptop here. I have a famous person on my laptop. Have a look at this. Somebody called Stella Damasus. All right, so we have a famous person here. You keep referencing famous people. We have a Nollywood actress right here. She's a singer. She's got an album out, etc., etc., etc. Put your critique directly to her. Talk to, famous people. Talk to our famous person right here. Go ahead.
Yes, you find that people like Stella.
Yes.
Stella is, she has like, she's interested in what she's doing. I mean, she's devoting her life to it. For example, when it comes to child marriage in Nigeria, she's it's kind of different for other celebrities or other famous people. I mean, it doesn't happen every day.
I think you're backtracking a little bit there. Now the pressure's
on.
Not
backtracking, but it's not like it happens every day that a famous person will start something and out of the blue. They usually get it from someone. So I'm not discrediting.
All right, so let's unpack this a little bit. Let's unpack this a little bit, James. Andalusia, if we're looking for strategies in terms of what makes a campaign work, so Babken is saying you can't just sit at your desk and think up a cool hashtag. You actually, it has to be a movement already. What have you seen? Because you follow so many social media movements, so many social movements. What are the ingredients where you say, this one I know is going to sustain itself, this one is going to take off? What have you seen?
Sure, I think it's when it really speaks to the general population. So a hashtag that really took off here in Mexico was Ya me cansé, which is I am tired. And this hashtag emerged after the Attorney General of Mexico reported that the 43 disappeared students of the Ayotzinapa school that had been disappeared in September of 2014.
Yeah, we did that story.
He said that they were they were all burned in a garbage dump, and that there were no remains. And then when he was giving a press conference, this was on November 7th, 2014, he wouldn't take any questions. And he just said, "Ya me cansé. I'm tired already. I can't take questions." And then immediately, thousands of people started tweeting the hashtag Ya me cansé, and they didn't only reference the disappeared students, they also reference all the corruption, all the violence, assassinations that have been happening in Mexico for the past decade and longer, and saying that they're really just fed up. It was a way for people to vent about how they're fed up, and then also related to this case, that was a very grave violations of human rights, but Ya me cansé was actually hacked. The hashtag all of a sudden disappeared after having millions and millions and millions of people using it.
How can a hashtag disappear, Andalusia? I don't understand. Where would it go?
Right, so I mean, all of a sudden it was just gone, and so internet specialists believe that it was that from tweet bots, and trolls that would all of a sudden use the hashtag and then link it to porn or other tweets that cannot be online, and so then therefore Twitter would block the hashtag. So that's believed what had happened, but people responded.
But you haven't unpacked us for us. You told us the most incredible story. Are you saying it's timing, it's the feeling that makes a social media campaign work? It's tapping into something that's actually happening, and it's a spark that you didn't know that official was going to say, "I am tired." So how does that unpack?
Right. I think it's just
how we do it
something
successfully.
that touches you deeply, I think like every Mexican and every person living in Mexico is enraged about something with, I mean, just a wonderfully, so I think it
have much to be enraged about.
Right, there's a lot to be enraged about. So I think it spoke, and it allowed people really to express in what they were enraged about, and in a short, in 140 characters, it also was, trending on Facebook, et cetera, but it's mostly on Twitter. And I think it's the same thing that what I had just mentioned, my first harassment, that also is another example that someone started it, it wasn't a famous person, but it spoke to so many women who have suffered from sexual harassment their whole lives, that they then were inspired by this hashtag to go and tell their story publicly.
I like that you mentioned just being inspired by something and then that could launch something else. This is one example. This is Ahmed. He says, "I remember that the launch of the hashtag Ice Bucket Challenge," I know so many of us might remember that one, was just one concerned individual, and he didn't plan for it to go that far, went so far as even making it to a show here in Al Jazeera. But one of the issues that people see with hashtags like these is that they soon fall out of favor. This is what Hind says, one of the challenges to making sure the issue still is recognized. She says the media loses interest in on-the-ground efforts that exist before and after those hashtag campaigns. Stella, I'm wondering if you think this is true in your case. Do you think the Child Not Bride movement that was bigger than just the hashtag is still something that people are paying attention to?
Well, unfortunately, hashtags work differently in different geographical zones. In a place like Nigeria, for instance, there are two ways that hashtags will work. First, if it is something that is trending and people enjoy doing, then they will jump on it. Secondly, if it is something that is happening and somebody famous, like James said, or a group of people who are known jump on it, then it will thrive. Because the Child Not Bride, we find that nowadays it's only the groups that set up Child Not Bride and those people who rally on the streets every time, they are the only ones that continue to use Child Not Bride. And those of us who are passionate about this issue. But the rest of the world in Nigeria, they moved on. Everybody else has moved on to the next big thing that's trending. Once something like Lemonade by Beyonce comes out, everybody jumps onto Lemonade. As long as there's no pending issue about a young girl going on at that time, nobody really cares about Child Not Bride anymore. Everybody jumps on whatever it is that's trending as a hashtag. Yeah, so you have to continue to push. Yeah, go ahead.
James?
I think actually the people care. They care, but because there is nobody to give the accountability, they have nobody who is going maybe to give them accountability on maybe the results of their movement or what they did online. So I think that is why it loses that they tend to move on to the next thing because nobody's giving them accountability.
No, I don't agree with that, James, because when it came to that issue of Child Not Bride, those people, the Obieze Kwesilis, the mothers, the Real Women organizations, they continue to give. If you go to their websites, they continue to give you their success stories. We had a success story with Essie Oruru last year. But the thing is, how many people
slow down a moment, because if we're talking about a success story, I would like to hear a little bit more about it. I've got a little page here, which is from The Nation. Yeah. So Essie Oruru's abduction, she was a teen, and what happened to her? Just very briefly, Stella.
Okay, she was abducted when she was 13 years old last year. She's from Bayelsa. She was taken from her parents by a guy who was living close to their home in Bayelsa, but took her to the north, where he could marry her legally, according to their tradition and their religion. So he married her, and then the parents started looking for her, and they went to the north. And when he found out that they were looking for her, he took her to the palace, where the police couldn't touch him, where nobody could touch him. Now, we started the hashtag Free Essie Oruru. I heard about the issue, and I got interested. The only reason that became a success story was because we actually had people on ground who went to the palace, who went to the emir to talk to him. And those were famous people like Ben Bruce of Silverbird and Obieze Kwesili. She used to be a minister. They actually went and imposed on the emir and said, look, if you don't want embarrassment to your palace and your kingdom, you have to let the people of Nigeria know that you frown upon people who kidnap little girls. And then he ordered for her to be released. And that was the only way, even though the media was telling people that it was the police. It wasn't. It was the emir himself that ordered for her release, and she was returned to her parents. But unfortunately, she was already radical, and she was already Islamized. You know, she was already raped. We heard that she was pregnant, because I had to call her father.
Stella, but she's now back with her. She's now back with her family, Stella. Just to cut that long tragic story short, it's a success story as far as you're concerned. Let me just go back to when we had Babken on the stream, and we had the Deputy Energy Minister on. And Babken, you didn't really hold back about what you wanted to tell him. Have a look at this.
Subsidizing from the budget is not the solution, and the fact that the Deputy Minister hasn't been able to understand that, I think, shows that what is really at the heart of the problem, which is that the government is really out of touch with what the real issues in Armenia are.
So we were seeing headlines like this. You had that confrontation. We were seeing headlines like this. Electric Yerevan March sparks violent crackdown in Armenia. To bring us up to date with the person who came up with that hashtag, where are we now? How successful have you been?
I mean, after the main mobilization ended, there were a series. So first of all, I think Electric Yerevan has left a legacy in Armenia of successful movement building and of successful holding government accountable. So a few things that happened. First of all, the company, the electric company, was changed ownerships. Right. Just yesterday, actually, it was announced that electricity fares will be coming down. Okay. So I mean, this
and that was the tipping point for what brought people out in the streets. Was the electricity prices were so high that it was, there were many other things, but that was the tipping point for the actual.
That was the tipping point, and actually, what was also the tipping point is the initial police reaction to the protest when they used the water cannons against protesters.
Prices have come down. Are officials more accountable now?
Look, the issue of accountability is a very big one in Armenia. We're still dealing with it in many ways. We just had a constitutional referendum in December, which was absolutely horrible. I mean, I saw ballot stuffing happening right in front of my eyes, lights being turned off, ballots stolen. So accountability is still really at the heart of the issue in Armenia. Electric Yerevan, I think, was just the latest or one of the biggest mobilizations that happened. But this is the thing. Hashtags only give you a small picture of what is happening. The movements for accountability in Armenia and social justice more broadly is ongoing, and there isn't always going to be a hashtag associated with it.
Sure. Andalusia, what are you following right now?
Sure. I mean, I think that hashtags evolve, especially some of these hashtags that I've mentioned about gender violence in Latin America. So there was first, when I was on the show last year, it was for Ni Una Menos, and that was saying that we don't want any fewer women in this world. Responding, it was from Argentina, responding to the murder of a 14-year-old schoolgirl. But that hashtag has evolved. It united women and people against gender violence all across Latin America. And maybe that hashtag stopped getting used, but then there were other hashtags. Just a few months ago, when 2 female travelers from Argentina were assassinated and left in bags, in garbage bags, in Ecuador. Then there was a whole campaign, a hashtag that was called Yo Viajo Sola, which means I travel alone, saying that women do have the right to travel alone, and it doesn't mean that we should be murdered
Andalusia
and dumped in a
Knoll,
bag.
Stella Damasus, Babken DerGrigorian, and James Propa. You know all about our post show. That's where we're heading at stream.aljazeera.com. But before we do that, very quickly, tomorrow you will see myself, Malika. Who else, Malika?
Derek, Imran,
Ahmed, and Lisa Fletcher, all in one show. Yes, we're taking you back 5 years to the beginning of the stream. Don't miss it. Hi there, welcome back. We are in our post show at stream.aljazeera.com. We have Stella, Andalusia, Babken, and James. And then we're going to go back to community because we've been having two conversations, the one that's online and the one that's on the show. So, Malika.
The online one is kind of focusing on what success would look like to different campaigners, because we've heard what our guests had to say. This is a video comment we got from someone you heard a little bit earlier out of Ethiopia. These were the Zone 9 bloggers. Just to refresh your memory, they were imprisoned under the auspices of creating unrest in Ethiopia. So this is a comment sent to us on what success looked like for them. Have a look.
I believe that we were released because of the effort done by our friends in the internet and in the globe, who were calling for our release on the using the free Zone 9 bloggers hashtag. It was reaching hundreds of thousands of people globally, if not millions. With all such calls and such campaigns, finally results. The government was pushed to release us.
So it's interesting in this comment, as you heard earlier, they blame the hashtag campaign and the campaigning for the reason that the government then threw them in jail. But also they say that the reason they got out, that they were released, that the government was forced to release them, is because of the power of people online campaigning. Stella, I'm interested in getting your take on that kind of dichotomy there.
Like I said before, the success story that we had was because it was popular. It was because it attracted foreign media. And because of the hashtags, the big wigs like the Bembrusis and the Obiazekwesili knew how serious it was and knew that the whole world was watching to see if they would do anything. So I feel that it has its pros and its cons, because that exposes you to what you're fighting for, and the people you're fighting can really come after you. But it also helps making the people in authority know that it's not a joke, that everybody is in on it, and we want to see if you would do something about it. And that's why today we're not using the free Ese Oruru anymore, because she has been freed and it has worked out for us. So that is one thing that has helped in a lot of cases, especially with child marriages, with Bring Back Our Girls and things like that, because the Nigerian government is still fighting because we are still using the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. So yeah.
Something that Malika and I were talking about as we were prepping for this show was that in the early days of the stream, when I was just a mere viewer, I was James, watching on TV, there were hashtags and social media campaigns. You would literally, anyone that was out there, you would cover, and I would actually be watching so I could use ideas to work on another digital platform.
You're stealing our ideas.
And it was sharing them with the world. And they needed to be shared. I was curating them.
Right.
Yes, I was stealing them.
That's what happens online.
It was such a rich place of ideas. And I was also getting them before anybody else was getting them.
Right.
So what's different now? Do you think we're also, there's so many. I mean, Andalusia must have mentioned about 10 in one show.
Right, exactly.
Like, hashtag.
Yeah. I think it is a sense of hashtag fatigue in a way, because in the early days there weren't a whole lot of campaigners doing this.
Yeah.
So there were few and far between, and now everyone has a hashtag. Everyone has someone whose job it is to make sure that they go online. Just like you were saying, Babken, you made sure to go online and say, let's get this started, because you knew that something would take off. You maybe didn't know it was going to be as big as it was, though.
Right. Well, I mean, it was already taking off, and actually, the hashtag didn't really take off until about a day or so after the protest.
Yeah.
But really, again, if there wasn't already something there, I don't think the hashtag would have done anything.
Can't make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still being used today. I mean, less and less so, of course, because the main contention is gone. But as long as there's contention in the streets, you're going to see that contention come up on the internet. I don't like to think of it as a technologically determinist way. You know, the contention really needs to already be there.
Do you think you've got another hashtag in you somewhere? It's like, do you have a book in you? Do you have a hashtag in you? Another one?
Can I make a plug?
Oh, okay. I asked for it. Go on, go ahead.
So I just came back from the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, which is a de facto independent republic. Yeah. And the one big issue right now over there is a demining campaign by the Halo Trust. And we were just there looking at what they were doing, and the hashtag that's being used now is MineFreeNK, which is part of their demining of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic.
Right.
And I hope that takes off, because that is probably the most anti-war operation, probably the most important humanitarian work happening in the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic today.
Sure. Babken and Andalusia and Stella, it's been such a pleasure having you on, and James as well. James, do you have a hashtag in you?
Not really. I'm just following because me, I believe in getting the hashtags off the internet and doing something. For example, I do radio, so when I'm on radio, I care about what is trading online and making sure that the person deep there who cannot access maybe internet can actually do something about it, play their part. So right now I'm following a hashtag called Save Carol. I mean, there is this lady suffering from cancer here in Uganda, and the public came out. The government didn't support, but the public came out and they raised past. I think she needed like 70,000 USD, and the public raised, I think it's past 15,000 past the amount that was needed. So, and she's giving it back to the Cancer Institute. I mean, some of these things we are pushing for the people to actually do something themselves, because when the cancer machine broke down, I mean, we came out on radio, on social media to tell the people that, you know what, it's us who are supposed to do some of these things. We can raise, if we have been able to raise money for Carol, then we can raise money for a new machine. So me, I just follow up. When I feel something is interesting, I follow it up and push it further.
Very good. Malika, where do you want to leave us?
I'll leave us with this. This is Moji Balu, who tweeted this. For those at the core of the movement, this is kind of some advice. The commitment to the cause that you are fighting for, informs tenacious, steadfast advocacy despite the waning interest by a fickle public. So meaning hashtag or no hashtag, the cause is still there. Just looking ahead to tomorrow. Stella, who's your favorite stream host?
Femi, okay.
Yes! One for Femi. Andalusia, who's your favorite stream host?
Oh, I don't want to have to choose, but Femi, you're pretty great and hilarious.
2 for Femi.
I'm gonna guess this is rigged. This is rigged.
Babken, who's your favorite stream host?
You know what? I like them all.
Oh, the politician, independent journalist speaks. All right, 1 for everybody else. James, your favorite stream host? Who is it?
Oh, I'm sorry, but I love Derek Ashong.
Derek, okay, so Derek's got 2.
Yeah, love Derek.
Femi's got 2. The others have 1. Ha ha! It's a good job. This is the post show. We are bringing back all the hosts. They're all amazing. The reason why I'm sitting here is because I used to watch Derek and Ahmed and Malika, and who else did I used to watch? Lisa. I watched Imran, actually all of them. Imran and his little black book. My dad actually knew the show I was working. My parents don't know anything about TV, and they actually knew Malika. And every time I went home after I joined the stream, they said, "How is Malika? How is she? Is she well?" My parents not only knew the show I was working on, they actually knew Malika as well.
Thank you, Femi's parents.
That is how special Malika is. So anyway, this is what we're going to be doing tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the stream host. So thank you so much for being on this show. And watch tomorrow, your favourite stream host. Take care, everybody.